Welcome to the NPH Hour here on News Talk Sauga 960 AM. I'm your host, Jason Thom, and on today's episode, we talk with a young woman who's about to take part in one of the most coveted opportunities in Canadian basketball. We also speak with Marcus Carr, who has reopened the Canadian basketball pipeline to the University of Texas. But first, we start with a chat about the NBA draft, which took place on Thursday, and there were a number of Canadian talking points. To chat about things, we welcome in North Pole Hoops lead scout Efe Ashakah. And Efe, with the 4th overall pick, the Raptors select Scottie Barnes, which led to some initial surprise from what has become known as Raptors Twitter. But, I mean, Barnes has always been one of two names that were mentioned along with Jalen Suggs. You know, there's some reasons I think now, looking back, that we see why the Raptors took Scottie Barnes with that pick.
This was a really intriguing pick for the Raptors. From the intangible side, in terms of mindset, the positive energy, he fits that bill. He interviewed really well with the team, but the length you can clearly see is something the Raptors are going after. They wanted that 6'8", 6'9" build where they can do multiple things defensively. And then he's also a facilitator. So for them over the long haul, what they can develop him into, I think is something they couldn't pass up on. But Jalen Suggs was kind of like, everyone had that feeling he was kind of the layup at that point. Again, he's an intangible guy as well, and he had that run with Gonzaga. So it felt like he was that guy for them at number 4. But I think Scottie Barnes is too talented to pass up at number 4.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing like a Masai Ujiri really chasing what he saw with a Kawhi Leonard, and I think you may see that with Barnes being able to fit into that mold. And the one thing that draft night doesn't always make sense right away is because official league business can't begin until the league calendar rolls over in August. So there's still some options there. We have Kyle Lowry obviously hanging out as a free agent and some possible trades as well. So is this just a matter of fans needing to trust in Masai and company?
Yeah, that definitely plays a big part in it. But there's a lot in the air when it comes to the Raptors right now. Obviously with Lowry's impending free agency, Masai still, as far as I know, he hasn't signed a contract yet. We'll find that out. And then with the Barnes pick, what does that signal for Pascal Siakam? Is he on the trade block right now? Because there's rumors floating around that he may want out. So it's like, okay, are we retooling or is it a rebuild right now? I think that's a big question that remains to be answered.
Yeah, and I think this is a team that we know likes to have options. They also understand that everybody in the league likes length, and they can teach a lot of the other things because, I mean, the one question mark around Barnes is shooting, but as we have seen, the Raptors can teach that skill. I mean, I think that's the difference as well that we see because, you know, you talk to college coaches all the time and they prioritize skill and shooting, but that's because at the NCAA level, they don't really have time to teach a lot of that. But at the NBA level, they can teach skill work like shooting, right?
All you're doing at the pro level is working on your craft, and things like shooting and the skill stuff is something some of these trainers and they feel is the easiest thing you can do, but you can't teach 6'9". You can't teach athleticism. You can't teach any of that stuff. So I understand their thought process on this draft, and we'll see how it looks like moving forward.
Let's get on to the Canadian content player-wise. Mississauga native Josh Primo at number 12. Maybe not a surprise because it's the San Antonio Spurs and they eye potential and bringing guys along slowly. And as the youngest player in the draft, you had him in your top 25, but what was 12 a surprise even for you?
This was the biggest shock of the draft. I was extremely surprised. The late first round was kind of where I had him in. To see him at number 12 to San Antonio, to me is, I won't say crazy, but it's interesting. It's interesting. I think he did a really good job through the draft process, showing his skill and what he could look like moving forward. But as a lottery pick, he's gonna have to grow slowly. I think San Antonio is a good spot for that. But expectation. What is the expectation moving forward for Josh? He's a great kid, and I think he's going to do a great job. But number 12, we'll see how that turns out.
The Spurs don't miss too often, and you mentioned that going into it, a lot of people were talking about Primo, and what I had read after the fact is that they knew that if they didn't take him, he was going to be picked a couple of slots later, so they couldn't even, trade back and try to get some more assets. So I mean, it only speaks to how good Josh has been. And having said all that, I know Landry Fields, he started in his NBA front office career with the Spurs, and he was at the BioSteel game and had been recruiting in Canada 5 years ago. So he would have saw Josh very early, and then Basketball Without Borders and Alabama. So the progression is all about it. And I want to talk about another Canadian, sort of, Chris Duarte, number 13 to the Pacers. Do we claim him after the 2 years in Montreal?
Yes, we do claim him. It's funny to see the reaction on like social media and stuff where it's like, oh, he's not really Canadian. Well, Giannis grew up in Greece. Yeah. He's Nigerian. So it's like, he was here. We claim him as us. He's Canadian. Let it go. So, but other than that, I like the pick. I think Duarte is one of those guys where no matter where he went, I think he'd fit in seamlessly because his skills would just translate to the pro game that well. He's long, he could shoot it, moves the ball really well, and he could defend. So I don't think there was many places where he wouldn't fit in and make an impact. So I like the Duarte pick.
The Raptors then go back-to-back in the second round. At 46, they take Delano Banton, a Toronto native that took a winding path through high school, then in the NCAA, transferred from Western Kentucky before really just being given the offensive keys at Nebraska, started the season through the roof, jumped on everyone's draft boards. But as the season progressed, turnovers went up, shooting percentage did not go up. Considering all the talk that we have about skill work and being able to shoot at the next level, was this surprising for you that the Raptors took a shot at Banton at 46?
This was a kind of out of nowhere pick. Obviously, the Toronto native, I think that story works perfectly. But throughout the whole process, we never saw Delano on any of the big boards. Mock drafts, we see him go undrafted. He wasn't above the Canadians such as Eugene Omarui and AJ Lawson as well. So he does have high upside. Again, the Raptors are going after that guy with the length and playmaking, the versatility. So I understand it from that standpoint. And I guess they're hoping with their developmental staff, they can get him to where he needs to be in the long haul. So it's an intriguing pick. I'm going to root for him. Canadian guy, Toronto guy, Rexdale. So I'm for it, and we'll see how it looks.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think it's just the Raptors banking on their own skill development of being able to kind of coach guys up, and you just cover their bases. Then with the 47th pick, they take David Johnson from Louisville, struggles defensively, but maybe was the best statistical shooter left at that point. Both these players, you expect you see both second rounders to spend a lot of time with the 905, and obviously we know how close, because the Raptors look like they're going to be back in Toronto this year, so it's a little easier for them to shuttle people back and forth, right?
Yeah. In regards to David Johnson shooting, you can never have enough of it, but we'll see how the season plays out. Like I mentioned earlier, in terms of how the season may look like, are we retooling or are we rebuilding? We'll find out as the season goes on with the guys who have their status up in the air, Siakam and so forth. If guys are on the block and got to move on, you guys obviously step up and fill those roles and compete and develop and take up those minutes. So it wouldn't be shocking to see them get some time. I wouldn't expect it, but we'll see what happens again.
After all 60 picks are called out into the early morning, then we have the onslaught of just signings, teams that don't have draft picks, but they have spots that they can fill heading into Summer League. And Eugene Omarui, picked up by the Dallas Mavericks, Nigerian-born, Rexdale raised. Not someone who physically screams NBA level, falls into that tweener category. What do you think about his future?
I think Eugene is just a dog. He's got that motor, so he's going to work his way in some way, somehow. It wouldn't shock me. Maybe, I don't know if this year, second year, third year, I feel like he will at some point be a rotation type of guy. Again, he's just mentally, I think he's just there with that. And skill-wise, again, he can build that shooting. He shot it very well in college anyways, but I think it's something that's underrated about his game, and he can move defensively. He plays bigger than his size, too, at 6'6", so definitely could see where Eugene cracks that rotation, and it's a great opportunity for him in Dallas.
And we've seen it before, especially with Canadians, that when it comes to the second round, sometimes it's better to not get selected and then choose where you land. You know, we've seen guys who have done great. Luguentz Dort, Chris Boucher, Kem Birch, Michael Mulder, Canadians who were not drafted and are now very, very solid in the NBA. And AJ Lawson, another one of those, he gets picked up by the Miami Heat.
Exactly. Fit is so important. AJ, again, did tremendously well through the draft process, the G League camp leading up to the draft combine. So it was kind of shocking to see him not get taken, but ultimately in the long run, Miami is a proven organization with Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra. They know what they're doing. Like, they build champions, they build winners. So I love the fit. I think he's going to do a great job from one, filling out his body. They're very keen on building guys physically and maturing that way. And he's got leadership in there in terms of Jimmy Butler at a player level as well, is a no-nonsense type of guy. So Summer League, we'll see what AJ can do. And if he can work himself into whatever the contract situation may be and get on a roster or get on the roster, I think he's a gem. I think he will be a gem.
Well, if AJ's past has shown anything, he's going to keep getting better and keep proving himself. You can find Efe on Twitter at EASHAKAH. And coming up next on the NPH Hour, we have someone who's working towards hearing his name called out at the NBA draft 1 year from now. Marcus Carr of the Texas Longhorns is after the break here on News Talk Saga 960 AM.